I'd like to call this meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council, serving as the sole governing authority for the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to order at 5 p.m. today on August 13th, 2020. And we'll do roll call.
Commissioner Bartholomew?
All right. I'll let the record reflect that all non-council members are present. Commissioner Kognovich will be back soon, huh? All right. All right. You could please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Goy, would you like to do the prayer today?
Bow our heads, please. We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for the parish's natural resources. We give thanks to God for our brave and courageous men and women in our military who daily risk their lives to protect our precious freedom, and we pray for our world leaders to know how to obtain world peace. We pray for this government body comprised of both council and administration. We pray we will always serve our parish with honesty, humility, and equality to all, and for the wisdom to know right from wrong and the courage to do what is right. And as this government body gathers here today, we pray that we will be spared from all harm and destruction this hurricane season. Amen.
Amen.
Mr. Chair, we'll take a moment for Mr. John's mother.
Absolutely, yes. Sure. In addition, we'd love to take a moment of silence to acknowledge the passing of Commissioner Bartholomew's mother. And also Miss Jermaine Curley. Thank you. Moving down the agenda, Ms. Barb.
We have no executive session. Item 3, status report by the Executive Port Director.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, members of the board. I am Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District. Follows is my Executive Director's report for the reporting period of 24 July to 12 August. During this time frame, we met with the newly appointed Commissioner of Multimodal Commerce, Renee Lapperly. We reviewed our strategic plan, port vision for building of a container port on the lower Mississippi River as outlined in the Commission's strategic plan and corresponding inland port network we have developed. Renee left with an appreciation of the gravity of the vision and our efforts to go from a completely greenfield site to a thriving economic powerhouse that will be the resurgence of economic vitality to our community, region, state, and throughout the Mississippi River Basin. During this time frame, I also participated in a joint meeting with the parish president, Mr. John Helmers, and Mr. Chip Klein, the executive director of CPRA, and his top staff members to discuss the many coastal restoration projects being undertaken within the parish. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. John Helmers to comment on that meeting.
Thank you, Sandy. We had a great meeting with CPRA and Sandy and the port, and we mainly talked about the Bud Mat project. That was the focus, to get a commitment from CPRA, and we did receive that verbal commitment from them. So we will proceed further on as the year plan of 2021 comes out. So we will have this money allocated. They're going to pick up the construction side. And that's where we're at with the port. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Can you please speak into the mic, Commissioner Russo? Yeah, you're live.
Thank you. Back to the engineering, is the engineering and design completed?
They still doing some survey on it right now. They were out last week, but the site has been selected and they wrapping up on all the engineering and design. That should be within another 2-3 weeks, they'll finish that up. But it's all going to be at that TP10, which is located kind of southeast of the Targa plant. So we'll be ready to go when the maintenance dredging happens doing the Tiger Pass.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the commissioners?
The cost, the CPRA is going to pick up, can you,
It's going to be about 3.9 million, right at $4 million.
thank you.
All right. Are there any questions from the staff or from members of the audience? All right. Thank you very much. Moving along the agenda.
Thank you, John. This past week, a very historic event happened with the United States Army Corps of Engineers and the state of Louisiana regarding the appropriations for the dredging of the lower Mississippi River that has global economic repercussions. I have invited Mr. Sean Duffy, the Executive Director of the Big River Coalition, of which our Port Authority is also a board member, to encapsulate the impact of this dredging.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Members of the council, I'll introduce myself as Mr. Matthews prepares a presentation, but I'm represent the Big River Coalition Executive Director, which is a navigation-related stakeholder group that represents the ports and pilots and different contractors up and down the Mississippi River. And this project has been one of ours that we started to revitalize going back to 2012. In fact, when we go through the presentation, I'll show the exact date, but nearly 8 years ago, almost to the day, we started working on the project to deepen the river to 50 feet.
I'm up.
Okay, all right. Paul, you're gonna?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Go ahead through the second. So, here's a famous quote by Mark Twain about the Mississippi River as the body of the nation. I use this slide a lot. So an artist put together all the streams in the United States and used different colors to represent each one. Well, the only problem I had was the Mississippi River was done in pink. So I had to change that, and I haven't heard from the artists, and hopefully I didn't violate any kind of real problems, but I've used this to show. And one thing I always like to add is, so the Mississippi River and that basin that you see connected there connects more miles of navigable waterways than the rest of the world combined. Believe it or not, there's not a lot of great economic data current that shows the true value of the river across all sectors, things like drinking water supply, recreation, navigation, flood control. But the best studies that we were able to show come up with a number of about $735 billion impact on the nation's economy every year. In the signing of the project partnership agreement that Sandy referenced a minute ago, Governor Edwards said their study showed that $750 billion a year were directly attributed to the Mississippi River. That's 2.4 million jobs. Below that, it shows information about a study that the American Association of Port Authorities did that shows 26% of the nation's economy is based on waterborne commerce. And when you think of the Mississippi River, you'll realize that 20% of that 26% comes through this river. I throw this slide and it's maybe a little too navigation centric, but the main point here is that one barge equals right approximately at 15 rail cars or 60 trucks. So we're looking at the safest, most environmentally friendly way to transport cargo. And that was very key in the efforts to lead to the deepening of the river. So in 2011, Congress asked the Corps of Engineers to determine how prepared the nation was for the new Panama Canal, a project that had post-Panamax preparedness within it. And as that report was developed, the Corps, in a quick timeline, reached out to navigation stakeholders around the country. We participated in that, shared a bunch of information. But when the report was delivered to Congress on that June 20th, 2012 date, it was very container-centric. And Mississippi River is a huge bulk market. And as we look at adding containers to the mix, but at that time we were definitely more of a bulk cargo port operations. And the day after that report was released, President Obama signed the We Can't Wait initiative that looked to focus on deepening 5 East Coast ports, all directly out of that report. And at that time, I called the Institute of Water Resources. I asked if they would meet with me and my board, and they agreed to. And we went and met with them, and they basically said, Mr. Duffy, you're right. We should have considered the Mississippi River more. We talked about it in the report, but we left it out of the conclusion. And then they said, what do you want us to do? We said, we'd like a memorandum where you fix that. We received that memorandum on August 24th of 2012. And on August 25th, I presented to my board that I believe we should revitalize the effort to deepen the river to 50 feet. And lo and behold, that's where we went. We identified 3 key steps. The first one was a threshold had been set at 45 feet for full federal funding for channel maintenance, which meant there's a 50-50 cost share if you went deeper than 45%. We knew that we were never going to get there if that threshold stayed in, and that was changed in the Word of Bill of 2014. That was really the biggest hurdle. Without that, we're not here today. Then after that, we had to update the economics. The river was justified for deepening to 55 feet in 1986. But so much time had lapsed, the economics were bad. So the economic report had to be redone. We had to assist with getting that cost share for the state of Louisiana through the Department of Transportation. And that report was released, I can't see the date, but in August of 2018. So that was like where we had a plan, we had economic viability, and then the next step was that we had to come through with what's called a PPA, Project Partnership Agreement, which is basically the cost share agreement, the schedule of work, the commitment between the federal and non-federal sponsor, the Corps of Engineers, and Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development. That was signed on July 31st. So we have 3 steps, but each one of them had a couple of steps under them. Right now, we have the agreement. We have 3 contracts ready to go for deepening to be advertised by the Corps of Engineers by the end of August. 2 cutterhead dredges, 1 hopper dredge. All 3 for the deepening, and we hope to have those dredges working by January. There's a lot of dredge activity in the lower river, a lot of great beneficial use, Paul. So on top of those 3 steps, 2 other things happened. In the Word of Bill of 2016, the cost share for deepening was changed from 50-50 to 75-25. I will tell you, we were thrilled to get the 25% through the state of Louisiana, appreciated the support. If it had stayed at 50%, we may not be here today. That was a huge cost savings. It was a great effort. I like to call that a little Louisiana land yap. And then the next thing that happened is through our work with different ag producers, the U.S. Soybean Board and the Soy Transportation Coalition decided that they wanted to put some skin in the game and were willing to donate $2 million to the Department of Transportation to begin the deepening for the state cost share. So we have a partner that's been there throughout, looking at continuing to move the ag commodities. So I talked a little bit about the deepening So a lot of things have 3 steps to it. So the first phase of deepening, that's what's signed, that's what the cost share agreement is for. That's to deepen from Venice to the Gulf. So that first 30 miles of river, when it's deepened to 50 feet, you can move cargo at 50 feet up to mile 154. So if you add South Pass, that's 22 miles. You dredge 30 miles, you get 150 plus 175 miles at 50 feet deep. So those are the contracts that have been let. The next thing that has to be done between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, there are some utility pipelines, natural gas, different things. Those pipelines have to be deepened. And that's a 50-50 cost share between the state of Louisiana, Department of Transportation, and the pipeline owner. That step will take a little while. And the track right now is that when these contracts go out, they expect the lower portion of the river to be deepened by the end of the calendar year 2021. And the portion above that from New Orleans to Baton Rouge or Belmont Crossing, that 175 miles of river, by 2024. Paul? I talk about beneficial use everywhere. So I've met with the Nature Conservancy. I've met with a lot of different groups that really look, usually are contrary to navigation projects. We told them if we got more funding, we would increase the beneficial use of dredge material. I've got a bunch of different photos that show it. This one slide, it's a lot of numbers, but it shows that since 2009, we've restored or recreated, however you want to frame it, 10,665 acres below Venice, all in Plaquemines Parish, through the beneficial use of dredge material. I went out recently on a very successful project. Paul? So if you look on the left, so that's 1985, the head of passes on the right is 2015. And if you were able to go back to the table, I'll just tell you that since that 2015 photo, 7,000 new acres have been added in that area. I have it on my Christmas list to get another aerial photo, and I look forward to having that. Yes, yes.
That was all built with dredges, right?
Yes, sir. All beneficial use of dredge material.
Diversions. No diversions. Just want to bring that up.
Very well said. So other things have happened that will help us maintain the channel. The Regional Dredge Demonstration Project had $525 million set aside for deepening the Mississippi River. And what happens is the Corps will partner with the Mobile District for a hopper dredge. So a hopper dredge can work here, and if there's work to do in the Mobile District, this year it was in Gulfport, but we got the hopper dredge Newport here early under that. Another thing is with all this investment and Congress saying to the Corps, we want to move forward, we want to build infrastructure, we want to move ahead. We have 3 new industry hopper dredges, and 2 of them under contract already being built, and a third that is announcements expected soon. And the Corps is also going to recapitalize their hopper dredge McFarland. So in essence, we're looking at 4 new hopper dredges being built. There are other cutter heads being built. This is the West Bay diversion. You will see the land and the sand in there. That's all been created with dredge material. As far as I can say, there is a study that I do not believe has been released in the last couple of weeks, but to our knowledge, there's no evidence that the diversion has accreted any land above the waterline. It is getting shallower, but we are putting material in with beneficial use. I said a lot of dredge contracts coming up. There's a hopper dredge disposal area contract that has been issued to Great Lakes Dredge and Dock to dredge 14 million cubic yards out of the hopper dredge disposal area. All that material will be beneficially used, and the area you're looking at here should add over another 1,000 acres. So this basically shows you the selected plan, what was authorized by the Corps when they signed the agreements, and it shows a 7.2 to 1 benefit cost ratio. I will say that I'm close with the Corps, and I'll fight with them. I think we need to get them the funding, but I will tell you that their economic justifications are usually low. That 7.2 doesn't include one new facility. There's at least $40 billion of new facilities proposed on the lower river as we speak. That economic figure does not include that at all. Those projections beyond are past the scope of the Corps. We can go through that one. You know, my friend at the Corps told me, Sean, sometimes your job is to teach Congress that Southwest Pass isn't a play that Drew Brees and Sean Payton drew up. This is Southwest Pass. You can see a lot of new sand, those areas, that's all been recently pumped over. This is a couple of years old. That's the Corps hopper dredge wheeler in the middle, and you can see a cutter head dredge working, all beneficial use. So I went out recently. This is a new project in Plaquemines off Baptiste Collect. The Corps calls it Gun Island. So I'm in the field being interviewed by John Snell. I will tell you I'm sweating pretty heavily. I've had a hat on. I got to take a hat off. Got to take sunglasses off, and I look awful on camera. And I'm thinking, like, here it is, and my wife says, "But you're on an island with a bunch of chicks." So, this is a slide I like to show a lot because it shows that we expect change in the river. So this is Beale Street in Memphis. This is during 2011, and the same shot in 2012. Shows a 60-foot difference in the water level on the river. If we can get to that video. That's another shot of Gun Island, over 50,000 nesting birds on a colony. Department of Wildlife and Fisheries says it's the largest colony of birds in the state of Louisiana. All recently built with dredge material from Baptiste Collect. And if we got 2 minutes for the video, I think that will really tie it up nicely.
Which one is that?
It's keep going. It's the very last thing. It'll be a black screen. That should, hopefully that'll play.
Yeah, why don't you, I'll see you on 2. Why don't you come right around the dredge for 2 lessons?
We have a cutter head dredge, pipeline dredge, that's working Southwest Pass. And these dredges, it's one-way traffic by these dredges. Captain Stephen Mott. I've been a bar pilot for going on 18 years now. Last year we did over 12,000 ships. 5 years ago we were doing about 10,500. Ships are getting bigger, tonnage is up, draft is up, but Southwest Pass is the same channel, same dimensions. It hasn't gotten any bigger, along with the vessels that we're bringing in here. It's definitely a lot more congested than it has been in years past, for sure. Cap, full maneuvering is how many revolutions? And nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows what this place is going to look like in 20 years. I know what it looked like 20 years ago and what it looks like today, and I don't know what it's going to look like in 20 years from now. The only thing standing between us and the Gulf of Mexico is that little sliver of Roseau Cane right there. And so anything that we can do to rebuild these banks, rebuild these 2 little slivers of marsh that run along Southwest Pass is beneficial, and it's beneficial to the world economy in a major way.
That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Sean. We really appreciate it, Mr. Jaffe. Are there any questions from the board?
Yes, I do.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Bartholomew.
Will it have any impact on our water supply, the intrusion of salt water up the river once that deepens?
So I'm going to answer you as best I can. I haven't reviewed that in a while, but I think on average now, it's about every 11 years that a water sill, the sill hasn't been built, and it may increase that. Some of the changes to the river involved increased precipitation, so that happens during low river, extremely low river, somewhere 2.5 feet or so at Carrollton gauge, where that pressure is not enough to push out the saltwater wedge. The Corps monitors it. We have built that saltwater sill twice since they deepened from 40 to 45 feet, and we may indeed have to, the Corps may indeed have to do it every 5 years, but it's really hard to tell because just having more increased higher rivers will also counter it. So by going deeper, you may incur it. By having higher water, you may reduce it.
You're not sure?
I don't think anybody's sure,
That's
no.
my point. My
Right.
point is, we need to think about that, though, just in case.
But
Have a plan on the table if that do happen.
But the plan on the table will be to build the sill like has been done in the past. They will continue. They have to, that's one of the requirements. So, and I agree with you. I'm not playing down, but when it happens, I was part of the last time they did it. And one of the things that happens is you do it every 10 years, and a lot of times you got new people, but the dredge contractors knew exactly what to do. I remember Hurricane Isaac kind of helped. They thought they were going to have to build the sill even higher, and Hurricane Isaac in some way pulled water out of the river so the sill was down below. But that will remain a project feature to be able to respond to the saltwater sill.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Gui.
Hello, Sean. Good to see you, buddy.
How you doing? All right. Good to see you, Dr. Gui.
You mentioned the 7.2 to 1 ratio. Over the last few years, and this is just my observation, the river has been higher than I've ever experienced for longer periods of time. You showed Beale Street, and I think that's one example of what we're dealing with upriver and downriver. Do you have any information regarding what the deepening of the river, what the impact of the deepening of the river will be in regards to the height of the river upstream?
So that's, of course, another very good question. I will tell you that I am a member of NOAA's Federal Advisory Committee, and that NOAA's Center for Excellence has provided reports that show precipitation around the world is increasing. So, a metric I didn't talk about because of where we are in limited time is Bonnie Carey. I mean, seeing Bonnie Carey open in back-to-back years, twice in the same year, like 3-4 times in 5 or 6 year periods is it's unheard of. We've never been there before. Projections are that indeed precipitation is going to continue to increase. So there are a lot of challenges. One thing I say a lot is that the Flood Control Act of 1928 has not been completed yet. It was never supposed to take 100 years to complete. In that Flood Control Act is a lot of off-river storage, if you will, reservoirs. The one that President Trump in the state of Mississippi continually push is the Yazoo pumps, backwater pumps, to pull more water off the river. And I think that's a damn good place to start. We should complete the Flood Control Act of 1928 because we should expect to have higher water. Having a better maintained channel and a deeper channel does at least offer incremental benefits that you will be able to move more water. It's challenging in that the moment you dredge, you will start the next high river, you start to get sedimentation all over. One of the things that's important about the deepening is the amount of maintenance dredging should not increase. By lowering the floor, you're going to, according to the scientists, and we never know until we get there. But the Corps is going to be dedicated. We're dependent upon funding, and we've made a lot of progress. Last year, the Corps budget wound up being for maintaining the ship channel right at $245 million. And years past, the average was about 120, about 4 or 5 years ago. So because of the appropriations and the attention on the river, we've been able to drive that up. And of course, we have to suffer with the flooding as part of trying to better manage it. But we need to continue that tracking of maintaining the river to better respond to increased precipitation and maintaining the channel.
Thank you for acknowledging those changes. Appreciate that. Are there any questions from the board? Members of the audience? All right, hearing none. Moving down the agenda. Sandy, does this complete your presentation?
No, sir.
Okay, please continue.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
For over 6 years, the port staff has labored to address the premise that was outlined in the port strategic plan, that being a feasibility study that was conducted that demonstrated that with the advent of the deepening and widening of the Panama Canal, the port was well suited by geography to take advantage of the anticipated supply chain shift of cargo originating or being consumed in the Mississippi River Basin. Heretofore, this cargo is imported or exported through the east or west coast ports. Prior to the dredging of the Panama Canal, 60% of all ocean-going vessels could not traverse the canal. The supply chain shift would move to a Gulfport gateway to the Midwest. Also noted in that study that there was no true Gulfport gateway. Maybe regional ports, but a gateway to the Midwest did not exist. This task was, and still is, a daunting one. We had to convince a terminal operator and a global cargo shipper to partner with Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District in order to build a new Gulf gateway to the Midwest that is environmentally green and could drastically deliver a substantial lower delivery transportation costs to beneficial cargo owners and farmers throughout the Midwest. I say all of this because yesterday was a huge milestone for the port. We recently signed a letter of intent with a global carrier, and yesterday we kicked off our strategic stakeholder engagement plan. First, we met with the governor and secretaries of transportation and Louisiana Economic Development as a follow-up to our meeting held with them in May of 2019. Once again, we stress the port is developing the container port on a public-private partnership as outlined in the Strategic Development Plan. We explained we are not asking for any state or federal funding. Our project is funded solely by private investment on an economic business case. Hence, we are not building this container port on build it and see if they will come, but on a private risk-reward basis that is attractive enough to the point that private funds will partner with a public entity to fund the project for a given rate of return and duration. The governor and the secretaries applauded our efforts and our approach and vowed to support it. Pursuant to our engagement plan, we next met via Microsoft Teams with our 3 state senators, being Connick, Hewitt, and Carter. And once again, as in the first meeting with the governor, our vice chair was with us. Our chairman, he let a honeymoon get in the way. I don't know why he did that, but our developer, a member of the strategic partner program, was with us. And once again, they were part of our briefing team. We also had 2 of our councilmen pipe in via Teams. And the announcement letter that you have received was sent to all the board members, beneficial cargo owners, inland ports, the network that we put together, the governance of those inland ports, to include 4 governors and their staff. In addition, this letter was sent to various trade, transportation, and maritime news outlets. Our initial response just today has been overwhelmingly positive. At this time, I would like to turn it over to our vice chair for her observations and those of Councilman Black and Arba.
Trudy, please.
Okay, Sandy, thank you very much. Yesterday was an exciting day. I was able to go with the team that collaborated this whole project and initiate this project and to the governor and his staff. They seemed to be very excited about the project and wanted to know the time of when it was going to start. So that was kind of exciting. I don't think Sandy mentioned we also had a virtual meeting with the senators also, which was Senator Carter, Hewitt, and Connick later on yesterday afternoon, and they just seemed to be tickled pink. So anything that they could do to help us move this project forward to benefit the economic impact of the state and to Plaquemines Parish. So as we know that this project would be a huge project for the parish and for the state together. So we just asking the public for support. We need this project to move to help the Plaquemines Parish economically, and it was a good day. So it was an exciting day for me. And Richie, sorry you're on your honeymoon, but it was a great day, I have to say.
All right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Black, care to share? All right. All right. Moving back to you, Sandy.
Okay.
First of all, are there any questions from the board? All right. All right, please continue.
Okay. Lastly, now that this kickoff is underway, the port staff heretofore has been holding many events pretty close hold because we could not let it get out in the public. So with that being said, and at the urging of our vice chairman, we're going to begin today presenting for the public a series of educational vignettes regarding the airport. Our initial vignette is just a 6-slide presentation, and it deals with the methodology and the reasoning used in the port site selection. So, Paul, you want to cue it up? Yep. Okay. These slides were derived from 2 studies. One was called the Millennium Port, which was a joint effort with the Port of New Orleans and Plaquemines Parish, and then also the studies that were done that resulted in the strategic plan done by the Trident Company. So this is a site selection. Page, please, Paul. One of the first things you got to do if you're building a port, you got to find out what cargo you're going to chase. You're not going to chase cargo that's going to be consumed in Idaho if you're a port on the Gulf Coast, and you're not going to export any cargo that is in Washington State. They're obviously going to be using a different port. So you have to determine where's your sweet spot, as I call it, or better yet, in the industry, they call it your consumption area. Our consumption area is right up the gut, right up the Mississippi River Valley Basin. So we began, the site selection was really based on where is the likely cargo we're going to go. So that would be determined if we were to pick a site on the east side of the river or the west side of the river. East side of the river, the rails were mostly going on a northeast pattern, and it was not going to hit our sweet spot. So keep that in mind when we look at site selection. The next slide, there was a matrix used with 3 ports. I've added the Magnolia site because prior to the selection, that was a very highly sought area. You can look at the site selection matrix at the bottom, the availability acreage for growth, the levee protection, the intermodal access, that being the rail and highway, the anchorage conflicts, and then we added also the VG funds that will be eligible for purchase. So we put that matrix together, and so we'll kind of walk you through these sites. The first one was the Venice port site. Not a lot of acreage, very low. You can see it's a mile marker 10. But it was very prohibitive as far as intermodal access. It's going to be really hard to get rail down there, next to impossible. And the onward movement of truck would equally be a lot of money. We felt that this was better suited for support service. Obviously, it already has commercial and recreation fishing, but we do have projects that will be using this Venice port site as a support service. Also, this site did not offer any hurricane or levee protection. The next site we looked at was the AMAC site that was considered in these studies. The AMAC site is directly across from Belle Chase on the east bank, 170 acres. It had existing dock infrastructure. It also had existing rail, but it was limited, and that rail is the Norfolk Southern, which is a traditional northeast route. So it did not include a natural service to the Dallas area, which is the 3rd largest metropolis in the U.S. It had limited flood protection. It's in the non-federal system. And the intermodal access, like I said, was significant improvements cost to rail and dray services. Also, this site has many dredging and navigation issues as it comes right around that bend. It shoals there. There would have to be a lot of money spent on to keeping it dredged. The next site is the South Campus, close to 900 acres. The river depth met the current terminal design. This was the site that was selected in the Millennium Port Study 20 plus years ago. It was more feasible access to rail and dray for our intermodal services. It had a limited anchorage conflict, so phase one would not be impacted by the anchorage, and we're working on that. And it was the best access to target markets, be it on the West Bank, and also our inland port network could be connected by the river, but equally, if not more important, the Dallas connection by rail. New Orleans boasts 6 Class 1s that come to their city, which is really remarkable. There's only one other city in the United States that can boast that, and that's Chicago. However, 4 of them, you have to go, from our vantage point, you'd have to go through the New Orleans Public Belt. The advantage we have is 2 of them that come in from the west are the Union Pacific and the Burlington Northern Santa Fe, and those 2 both provide a direct rail service to Dallas. The last site is the Magnolia site, very good riverfront. This would have been a prime site. I talked to the Coleman family almost about right when I got here. What they were going to do is mitigate, I think, about 1,200 acres west of Highway 23 to make that a full-fledged port. The Corps of Engineers would not budge on their back levee, so it really hurt this site pretty bad. It has a narrow entrance if you could not broaden it. And what ports need today is not so much footage on the river as depth from the river. Because modern transportation, it is a push forward to the river with the services that have to happen. So optimal, you'd like a lot of river frontage with a lot of depth. But when they were cut short by Highway 23 and could not bring in that extra acreage, it really hurt. As a matter of fact, if you turn the page, this site also has the Magnolia anchorage right in front of it. It's covered by 85% of its frontage. To also demonstrate the next page, please, Paul. If you superimpose the New Orleans terminal, the Napoleon Yard, it fits almost in this configuration. And again, the depth from the river does not allow for a modern port. So going back to our matrix, the next slide, the port that had the most checkoff is the South Campus site, which is the one that we're going to build the container port. Mr. Chairman, subject to your questions or comments from you, the board members, or the public, I and our staff stand ready.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board?
The next presentation we'll give at the next meeting will be our inland port network that we have designed.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Mr. Sal Latrico, who's spearheaded a lot of that, to be here.
Love to hear it. Thank you. Any questions from the table? Sure. Commissioner Russo, go ahead.
Yes, I read the press release, and it says we're going to be in study mode for the next 6 months. Who was conducting the study? Is it us, or is it the container terminal people?
It's a joint study. They want a pre-feasibility done by Labor Day. And these things normally would last about anywhere from 6 to 12 months. 9 to 12 months. So they said that they'd like to shrink it down to 6. So we have formed joint teams on our side and with the team, with the container operator, terminal operator, and the cargo carrier. Yeah, we're not paying for it. They are.
And so they're feeding information into it?
Yes, sir. A lot. It's a tremendous amount of information that goes into these feasibility studies because, you can look at something that says, okay, that briefs well, but we're going to put all the experts on it and look under the hood, kick the tires, and make sure that what we think will happen, the pre-feasibilities will bear it out. So it's pretty intense.
I also read in the press release that the LA 23 Development Company is going to be funding or seeking funding for rail, highways. Does that include in the Peters Road bypass bridge?
That's not in his purview. His really is a container terminal, but we have been able to piggyback on what he's doing because a lot of the investors would like the whole piece. So it really would come out very economical. And that was a good question that the governor asked and Sean Wilson, realizing that that when we say we're not going to be using state or federal funds, they want to know how it would tie into that. And so Peters Road readily came up. So good question.
So that private funding is being sought to build that?
We're going to seek private funding. If they feel that they can swallow the risk reward and they get a good return on the money, they'll put it into their purview.
And I guess the question is that it wouldn't be a toll road?
No, sir.
It would be absorbed by the project?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the rail also?
Yes, sir.
So we don't have any estimates on what we're looking at yet, huh?
Not yet.
Okay. And the rail corridor, do we know which corridor we're looking at? Are we talking about the Peters Road extension as well?
Yes, sir. And I'm glad you asked that because that truly is going to open up a lot of industrial development around the Naval Air Station, which we greatly need for warehousing distribution centers. And with that rail coming in and tying into to the existing rail coming down Highway 23, and with the air cargo network that we can run with the Naval Air Station, is really going to complete the transportation hub. That, too, was very desirable from the carrier. They have a company that they just absorbed, a logistics company, spent quite a bit of money on it, and they're very enthusiastic over developing the air cargo piece.
And will that program include 700 acres that the parish owns?
Yes, sir.
So it'll be part of the feasibility study then?
Not part of this. When we start really digging into the NAS and the air cargo, certainly, I mean, that's prime property for the parish.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner LaFrance?
Yes. I heard you spoke the pros and cons on the Venice location, the Amex Camation, and the Magnolia location. Mm-hmm. But I didn't hear you say any negative issue about the South Campus. So is there any cons or negative issue on the South Campus there, location?
Well, the long poles on the tent for that really going to be bringing the rail down and the highway, but it has the best access area for our markets. That first slide I showed you, the inland market and the, in particularly Dallas. Dallas is very important, and it's a rail play. Dallas could be bigger than our whole inland network. It would certainly feed the inland network. And Dallas is also writing a letter of support. They're very excited about this project. Dallas has a 95,000 square acre inland port that they're building. It is the third largest metropolis in the United States. It's a major distribution city that feeds the Midwest. So we'll be feeding the Midwest via rail and also water.
Any other questions, Mr. LaFrance?
I don't think he answered my question.
Try again.
Is there any negative issue with the location? Any negative issue with that South Campus?
The only negative is that it does not have rail there now. We got to bring the rail to it. Yeah, that's what I meant. That rail would be our long pole in the tent, but the ROWs are there, and it's just a matter of piecing it together.
And this location is in Point LaHash?
Right. Point Celeste.
Right above the ferry? We have that pit.
Yes, sir.
So that, you don't consider that a negative?
No, that pit is a very good positive because when you're looking at an appraisal basis, the pit, it's about 200 acres on that. Its value is zero as far as what we have to buy it for. Once we develop the property, that whole property is going to have to be mudded out, grounded out. You have to get down very deep. It's got to be filled with sand for a base and pilings. So you get a twofer with the holes because they don't cost you anything, and you don't have to spend any money to dig the hole that you're going to have to dig anyway, to grub it down.
But you're gonna have to pay to fill it.
Sure, but you'd have to pay to fill the whole thing anyway.
And if you're gonna dig the material off this property, what you do with that material?
Well, if the material is good and then we could put it on a levee system, that'd be one thing. If it's not, we would try to use it as beneficial use for coastal restoration.
Do you plan on speaking to the local people about this location?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have an engagement plan. Yeah, starting today. This kicked it off this morning. Well, actually yesterday with talking to the governor.
Mr. Blank.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you talked about the highway, so you're gonna move the highway from where it's at and put it to the back levee now?
That is the plan. It would strengthen the back levee. We just were looking at some different type of scenarios, but that would make a most efficient run port, keeping the public traffic from running through the port. There's a lot of things that we have to take into account, but yes, sir, that's one major.
How many miles does that add to a constituent of mine?
How many miles does that add to what?
My constituents to come to Belchase or Harvey or?
Well, the mileage as it is right now is about 5 miles right through the port on Highway 23. I would say that probably would add no more than 2 miles. The back section in coming up, and then when you do come up, it's almost slanting towards parcel 1. So I'd say at most 2 miles.
All right.
All right. Mr. Russo?
So one final question, since I've heard all of this, the project will bear the cost of all of this, highway relocations and
Yes,
all?
sir.
All right, thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions from the panel? All right, hearing none. What about from the audience? Mr. Valley, please come to the podium, state your name and address, please.
Donald Valley, 109 Nancy Court, Belchase. First off, I'd like to compliment Sandy and your staff. It's quite an ambitious program you're proposing. And if it all comes to fruition, it'll be a beautiful thing for Plaquemine Parish.
Sure.
Although I guess I've been a banker too long and I've financed so many deals and I listened to every developer bringing his proposals into us. And I got to tell you, my personal opinion, it's pie in the sky. Okay? Now, having said that to you, if it works out, it's great. Your letter of intent, as I understand, is contingent upon getting intermodal to the site and out of Belchase. It includes railroad and road access. And I'm listening to you talk about moving the rail over to Buccaneer Road, putting back in the Peters Road extension, all of which cost is close to probably $500 million without question on the numbers that we've seen in previous years about what it's going to cost to build a bridge and what it's going to cost to move the rail. I don't know where you're going to get the money from if all these people are dependent upon that. But this thing will not fly unless you get those roads and bridges as well as the intermodal portion that you want to put through there. Is that letter of intent contingent upon getting that? And when?
That is part of the due diligence process. We have funds that are lined up that we're waiting for this LOI and waiting for the due diligence process to take place.
Funds from whom?
They are, say again?
Funds from whom?
Well, Blackstone being one of them. There's private family money, such as like you have the Kennedy Foundation. So pretty well-heeled money.
Okay, so we can wait the 6 months and look at your LOI, look at the studies that comes through, answer all these questions, and where we're going to move everything to, and how it's going to get done. And then what happens? We're going to wait another 6 months after that? Or you continuing talking about buying holes in the ground that y'all are talking about already? I mean, you're talking about buying a piece of property down
I
there.
wish the whole property had a hole in the ground, if that answers your question, because it'd be a lot less expense to develop it. I don't know why y'all so concerned about a hole in the ground. You ought to look at it as that's gravy.
Mr. Saylor,
You'd have to grub it before you develop it.
I know what you wish for. I guess I wish that you were an engineer that I could rely upon and take your word that we need pilings and we need fill and anything else that goes in here. I'm looking at a hole in the ground of the borough pit. And do you have engineering studies now that's fine?
We have engineers that have determined that, and that's part of the due diligence process.
Did we get a copy of that, Mr. Chairman?
I'm sure something like that could be
The
provided
engineering report's confidential?
at that point.
No, we're going through the due diligence process.
Okay, well, in time.
In time.
In time. I wish you well.
I appreciate that very much. I have a question for you. Don,
Yes, sir.
can you think of any other project with the magnitude of this that's going to bring jobs to this area? What other project brings jobs? What other project is going to bring schools, better water systems, water towers, roads, construction? What can you think of something? Oil and gas is not going to come back like it was. All right, where are we going to get these jobs? Where kids that get out of high school and find a $80,000+ job and keep their families here? Because I'm all open. I'm going to build a port. I think that would help.
Let me answer your question.
Yes, sir.
First off, I think what you're doing with the container port, I know somewhat of what New Orleans is talking about, a container port. I don't know the Violet Dockport site. I tried to buy the AMAX site years ago. I've flown from Loop to Baton Rouge 3 times with our salespeople and identify everything that comes in this river, why it comes in the river, who services all the way from the plants to Baton Rouge, as well as what might be developable. I think the rivers, intermodal is where it's got to be. But you're talking about lots of dollars. I'm talking about close to $4 or $5 billion. The biggest thing you got that you bring into this port, this city, is the LNG plant. When the LNG plant gets up and running, if it does, it's going to be a boom for us all down here. But at the same time, the container site and spending a lot of money on container, pie in the sky, in my opinion, still.
I appreciate that.
Well, thanks for that rousing discussion, gentlemen. I appreciate that. Anybody else from the audience? Please come to the mic and state your name and address, sir.
My name is Vic Scarsoni, 125 Wood Chase and Bell Chase. I only have one question. Currently, the state has Peters Road as being a 2-lane highway with a bridge and the intermodal with a train trestle. I feel that if it's a 2-lane, I think the container vessels will probably take one of those lanes all the time. So if you're in your plans, if you could, try to make it a 4-lane instead of a 2-lane, because currently the state says 2-lane. So
you're spot on.
Okay.
Spot on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm.
Any other questions from members of the audience? All right. Good to see you, Mr. Turner. Please state your name and address for the record.
Burgard Turner, 161 East Bellevue.
Just a couple of questions. The strategic plan, how does the community gain access to it? Is it on the website somewhere?
Yes, sir.
It is on the website? And you also mentioned about a rate of return, that was being worked on, and also, what is that rate of return and for what length of time?
That's for the private investor to determine what his rate of return is, and he's going to assess the risk and reward. And their gut is that there's a lot of money that needs to be invested everywhere, large sums of money. If they sit in a bank, they're not going to get the return that they need for their investors. So they constantly look for large projects like this. They study them. They study the risk and reward and the probability of it turning out. And they're not going to put their money into something unless they have a very, very good feel that this is going to work. And that's why that money was really sitting. They liked the idea. They liked the vision, but they were waiting for, let's see if a terminal operator and a global carrier bite. And when they did, they're like, we're in. And they've told us that from the beginning. You get a terminal operator here and you get a global carrier that bites on this, and we like this project. So we're very fortunate that we have this God-given river, and we're down here at River Mile 50, and it's not very populated down there, so we're not trying to squeeze it in like a Napoleon yard in between two bridges and a garden district. We have the room to do it right. We have the room to do it very green. And now that I mentioned that, these carriers now, they're adamant that these are going to be environmentally friendly. They like the fact that we're going to be running all our vehicles on LNG. They like the fact that all the vehicles on the water side are going to be natural gas or LNG. They like the fact that the American Patriot Holdings vessel is also going to be run on LNG. And our sister inland ports have got a dictum that when they try to match the aperture of what we're doing here with where they are in Memphis or St. Louis, it's got to be built green. So we're very environmentally conscious. We don't have any legacy infrastructure to overcome. We're not trying to put a Band-Aid on a 150-year-old port. We don't have legacy labor agreements. We'll be starting off with fresh labor agreements. So this is going to be a very modern, efficiently run port, and it is going to be the economic answer to our community, to our region, to our state.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other question I have is you mentioned about the moving the road back, but I remember when Mr. Nungas was off, I think Mr. Roussel, and correct me, Mr. Roussel, but I think he was working with a company who was looking to expand the Magnolia property, moving back, and you said earlier that wasn't feasible, yet at the same time, we're willing to move the road at that time, right? The levee alignment could have been moved. We've moved it several times, at least a couple of times, at the current location. It could have been moved, and Magnolia site would have been ideal.
It would have.
But you had another individual working on that, and so we couldn't sell that. My concern about what was stated as far as the site being the number one site. I was on the council when the study was done, and the study came back from Trident saying that the number one site was on the East Bank. The number two site was in Venice. You weren't even here. I was here.
Wasn't here either.
I know. That's why I can speak on it.
Gentlemen, please.
I was here, right? And what was presented to us, that the number one site was on the East Bank, number two site was in Venice, number three site is the site that was actually selected. Now, how the numbers were put together today, I can tell you that's not what was presented to this council at the time, right after the study was done. Now, we're not going to cry over that. It's done. All I'm saying is, we can paint the picture today, but that's not reality of what was presented to us. And that's all I'm communicating. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Turner.
Mr. Turner, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. I can't help what happened then, but we're building a port today, and it's going to be the economic comeback of our region.
I hope you're correct. And all I'm saying is, right, we're making a presentation to the community, and many of the people don't have the history because they weren't here. When I say here, meaning they were here in the parish, but they weren't in the council meetings and they weren't involved as much. And so this is to set the record straight because I was sitting where they were. So was Mr. Gouy. Now that you've come on and the picture that you're painting and selling us that this was the number one site, maybe that's what you're able to sell, but I can tell you that's not what was presented. And that's why I'm stating it.
So
That's it. Thank you very much.
So just clearly, anything that happens as we talk about engaging the community, as we can provide information as we move forward, any way you'd like to meet with us and we can help communicate that to the public, we'd love to work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Burkhart.
Sandy, I appreciate your presentation. I'd just like to say that there's a lot of people in this community that are absolutely counting on you to bring this to fruition in the most environmentally responsible ways possible. We would very much appreciate it if, even before a shovel hits the ground, if every student that wants a job at this facility, both during under construction and while it's in operation, would be so equipped. And we'd love to see
I'm glad you brought that up because we are really pushing Plaquemines first for jobs. And you and Benny and Vice Chairman, y'all remember we went to Houston and they were talking about, kids coming out of high school and sticking with it and working hard and, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and these kids are earning six figures. And you can raise a family on that. This is what's going to keep our kids here in this area. And there are going to be jobs here. If you don't have a job here in 10 years, you don't want one.
And we do hope that the strategic nature of Plaquemines Parish, the river, no overhead obstructions, et cetera, is enough to not give away a large tax break to these folks that want to come here, and that the parish can actually use some of that ad valorem tax to help operate here.
Amen.
You have 10-foot high grass in the ditches.
It's our time.
Got it.
It's Plaquemines' time. It's our community's time. We got it right here. We need to do it right, and we can do it right.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your presentation. We're looking forward to the Inland Waterway Network next time. Thank you again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions before Mr. Sanders gets up from the audience, from the panel? All right. Thank you very much. Moving down the agenda, Ms. Barb. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Ms. Riley, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Tracy Riley, retired, 13482 Highway 23, Bell Chase. I'm a resident here in Plaquemines Parish, and any opportunity I have to come forward for this particular project, I'm going to take it because it does have substantial economic potential, not just for the working class, but also for business owners. And I am particularly interested in the contracts that are going to come from this project in particular. I recall when the governor came and announced this project back in 2016, he did put out there that the objective is to make sure that we hire Plaquemines personnel first and give contracts to personnel from this parish first. And so any opportunity that I have to come forward and remind the council as well as the director and his administration that we are anxiously waiting for the time to put in those bids. I represent one of hundreds of contractors from in and around this region who are particularly African American. We do have specialties in the construction, electrical, etc., and we want to be sure that there is a relationship forged to be considered for these opportunities. There's currently a very sad disparity with the wealth gap between our community and other communities in this area, and we want to make sure that we use this opportunity to close it. And I also would like to say that in the preliminary conversations that I've had with the port director, as well as with his staff, they have been very professional and very accommodating to peel out a little bit of time to meet with myself and other members of our contracting community to make sure those relationships are in place so that we could have those opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Riley. All right, any other questions before we move down the agenda? All right, Ms. Bard, please.
Status and update of the executive calendar, Commissioner Roussel.
Yes, as you know, we're supposedly sharing the calendar. I've looked at the calendar, and the calendar is the same for the last 3 months. So my question is, how real is the calendar, and how often do you update it?
Mr. Roussel, I'm going to agree with you. For about the last 3 months, we have been dealing with a very sensitive matter that, like I say, just came to fruition here. There's a lot of things that I would love to put on the calendar, and I told Paul, now that the pickle's out of the jar, we can share this, and we're going to shout it from the mountaintop. And I want all the other ports to know what we're doing. I've gotten phone calls from 3 of them already up the road. So I accept responsibility for what you're saying. The calendars are somewhat dated. When COVID hit, a lot of organizations came up with, everyone wanted to do a weekly teams, and then that moved to bi-weekly and then monthly, and that too fizzed out. But when they were put on there, they were on there. But the calendars will improve. You have my word on it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Kognovich?
Yeah, I don't want to go look for a calendar. I'd like it sent to me. Thank you.
Mark, I'll help you out with that later on. It's on Outlook, and you can just pull it and got it. All right, any other comments? All right, moving down the agenda, Ms. Barb.
3A, financial report, budget to actual, there is none. Number 4, bids and advertisements, there are none. Number 5, introduction of ordinances and resolutions. Mr. Chairman, we do have an introduction.
Please, by all means, read it into the record.
For Commissioner Roussel, a resolution of the Plaquemines Parish Council, acting as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District, authorizing and directing the initiation of litigation related to the proposed Belle Chase Bridge project, authorizing and directing the Port Chairman, Richie Blank, to engage special counsel for such litigation and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. That is it.
Thank you very much. Moving down the agenda, please.
Number 6, ordinances and resolutions on second reading and final passage. There are no ordinances under item 6A. 6B as in boy.
Commissioner Arbor would like to withdraw this one. Withdraw, not defer, correct? Correct. Got it.
6C, an ordinance to amend and as amended readopt Rule 1 in Chapter 1 of Section 2-18 of the Code of Ordinances for Plaquemines Parish relative to the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District to rescind, annul, and set aside ordinance number 19-150 and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. And we do have changes for that ordinance.
Okay. Could you please read them?
On line 11, 26, and 44, changing the time.
No, that's correct. This is what it originally was. We're just changing it to 3.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to read.
These are the only changes. 10 and 44, you said 3 lines, and it's fill in the blank.
Okay, I'm sorry. On line 11 and 44, the changes are changing the time from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And then on line 45, we have a fill in the blank for September. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember LaFrance, we don't have a time frame for that.
What will be the first meeting in September?
The way the ordinance is written, it says beginning the first meeting of, so if you want it September, we'll just have the first meeting of September.
Next meeting will be August the 27th, right?
No, it would be the second week in September, whatever that is. But I just have the month that it'll start, if that's okay with you. Okay. September.
10th.
Yeah.
Those are the rest of the changes.
Thank you. All right. Are there any questions from the board? What about from the citizens in the audience? From the staff? All right. I'd like to call a question. We'll go to vote. Oh, sorry. Oh, Commissioner Bartholomew, go ahead. My apologies.
Hold on.
Oh, back to Mr. LaFrance.
The motion with me, you need to get a second.
Haha. Good point. All right. So on a motion by Commissioner LaFrance, and who's seconding?
Well, the second is done last meeting.
Okay.
By me.
All right. Seconded by Commissioner Roussel. Can we call a question, please? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, once again, my apologies. Go ahead, Mr. Bartholomew.
Are you in favor of this changing times? You endorsing this resolution, sir? Mr. Chairman, Ms. Chair, and the Vice Chair, are y'all in supporting this document to change the meeting to 3?
Actually, I really wanted to hear from the audience.
All right, I'll just withdraw my comments at this. All right, go ahead.
Are there any questions from the public on this? Now, this is, bear in mind to move the meeting start time from 5 p.m. to 3 p.m. You know, on one side, we want to be available, transparent for folks to come in with, minimal disruption. So we've been having these meetings at 5. On the other hand, we're up here at 9:30 at night falling asleep on the dais, So 3 o'clock was viewed as sort of a compromise time where folks may only need to take an hour or so off of work, 2 hours off of work if they're working like a 9 to 5 regular job. But we do want to hear from the public before we go to vote for this. So, Ms. Riley, please state your name and address again. Thank you.
Major Tracy Riley, retired, 13482 Highway 23, Belle Chase, Louisiana. I am a resident of Plaquemines Parish. I, for one, appreciate the 5 o'clock start time. It does afford folks who are not employed by the government to get here at a time that we can actually participate. So I would not be in favor of putting it during what is considered regular work hours, 9 to 5. And also, I'd like to say I was having this conversation outside. You have a lot of overflow folks outside, and they wanted to weigh in on that subject. So I don't know how logistically you'd like to deal with that, but there are some people who want to speak on it.
Sure. We'll get Ms. Robin and the deputy in the back. Could you please help cycle folks through? Some folks may have to temporarily step outside due to the COVID restrictions.
Chris Schultz, 411 Monclaw Avenue, Belle Chase. I understand the point of trying to move it forward. It's late nights, especially on the East Bank, but at the same time, and I know it's hot topic issues going on right now, but I was coming when it was 1 o'clock meetings and there's nobody here. I mean, we have overflow, for goodness sakes, tonight. So, especially down the road, if it's at 3 o'clock, if people work in the city, Gretna, whatever, they're going to have to leave at 1:30, 2 o'clock to make a 3 o'clock meeting. So that's really 3.5 hours. 5 o'clock, talking about only an hour, they're going to have to miss work. I mean, so personally, I understand y'all's issues. I've made that drive back from Point Lahash, late nights and everything, but 5 o'clock, I think you get more involvement for the community.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Ann, please.
Yes, Wyona Kirkland, 104 Severn Drive. I agree to also that the 5 o'clock p.m. is the best time. Most people are getting off at 5 o'clock. You could take a a half an hour leave from work, or you can do something like that. But 3 o'clock, that's an inconvenient. 1 o'clock is definitely an inconvenient. So 5 o'clock is the best time. Thank you.
Very much. Oh, Rob, she was stepping up to the mic. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chase Kennedy Uncle. I live at 145 Lewis Lane, Pointe-a-la-Hache, Louisiana. I've spent 20 out of my 24 years in this parish and in Pointe-a-la-Hache. And I'm just here to tell you that, to reiterate what all these folks said, we're used to the inconvenience, right? I live in the very southern end of the parish, so I'm used to having to drive a long way to do things. But we have jobs because we have to support our families. And so leaving work at 1 o'clock to come to a 3 o'clock meeting to voice your concerns for where you live is just too much. I also agree that the 5 o'clock start time is better.
Thank you very much. All right, next, please.
Hi, David Clark, 108 Avenue A, Belchase. I addressed the subject before, last time we tried to change the time. I'm totally with them. 5 o'clock is great for me. When there's an issue that concerns me, I can make it here on time after work. And I know it's going to come up again at the council meeting, so when council takes it, so I'll be here again concerning my voice. But I'm definitely for the 5 o'clock.
Thank you much, Mr. Clark. Oh, Mr. Henry?
How's it going, Mr. Blank? Hey, congratulations too, man.
Thank you very much.
Got that, sir. Listen, 5 is a wonderful time, man. You know, give the people a chance to say what they got to say. The chronicle listen, you know. 5 is the best time. 1's a little bit too early.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to withdraw my motion. I'll ask Mr. Roussel to withdraw his second, and then we'll just leave it at 5.
Absolutely. Ms. Barb, Kim, can you please get that in the record? Thank you. Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead, Mr. Russo.
I've sat up here for many, many years, and I can tell you that the reason you're here is because you have a hot item on the agenda that hasn't been dealt with. We can set this at 3 o'clock, 1 o'clock. It's not going to matter unless you have a hot item on the agenda to show up. And I've sat up here for many years where no one shows up. And so I think that it's more efficient to go to the 3 o'clock. And I realize that all of the people who have testified today wanted it at 5 o'clock. But I'd like to know how many times they're going to be here for the rest of the year and next year after this issue that we dispense with that's on the agenda today will come back and be engaged. So, because we got a hot item on the agenda, that's the reason that we're having these people want to say that we got to have it at 5 o'clock. So that's my opinion of it and my experience of it. I would prefer to see us go to 3 o'clock, which is a compromise. And if we've been withdrawn, then someone else will have to reintroduce it. But I didn't want to let the opportunity go by without me voicing my opinion. Thank you.
Mr. Forche, please.
Okay, I put a little poll on the computer, put it out there on the site, and just to see what the response was. Now, overwhelmingly, it was 5 o'clock. It was 2 to 1, 5 o'clock. So I personally voted for 3, only because of being in a compromising situation. I understand that everybody here staying here till 10:30, 11 o'clock, especially in these long and contentious meetings. So, but I just wanted to let y'all know what this poll revealed, and let it at least put the weight of the people that did vote in the poll. So, Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Forshey. Mr. Valley?
Mr. Russell and the rest of y'all, I've sat here with you all at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night almost, and I watched y'all push things through, attempt to do things at the last minute to get out of here before the lights go off on us. And I agree with you, Mr. Russell, the times that I come to these meetings and I watch them online, it's only when there's a specific issue that we get any attendance to these things. We probably got a handful of probably 5 people that come on a regular basis to take an active participation in the goals of this agency. 3 o'clock is probably fair enough to you all to ask you all to spend all night long to sit here and go through these long agendas, and as he talked about, contentious. And I support Mr. France when you first put this through, and Mr. Russell, you've asked about it. You know, I didn't hear anybody objecting to that, and I appreciate the people that came here today. They'll come back when there's something that's going to affect them, and I think that's what you're going to get. But I think it's got to be considered to you all because you serve us.
Thank you very much,
you.
Mr. Valley. Ms. Newberry, and I just want to remind folks that, it's off the table, so we don't need to belabor.
I'm going to ask Mr. LaFrance to reconsider and at least let the board vote on this.
All right.
People want to talk.
Oh, sure. If there's anybody else who would like to speak. Mr. Turner?
Virgo Turner, 161 East Bellevue. I wasn't going to come back up because it had been withdrawn, but being that it's being considered, I want to state that I think it should remain at 5, and the purpose for that is because, one, Mr. Russell is correct, Mr. Valley is correct in that people only come out when they have a hot issue. But 5 o'clock affords them the opportunity to come out when there's a hot issue. That deputy doesn't always pull his weapon, but there are times when he needs to be able to pull it. There are times when people need to be able to come and address their representatives. And so the 5 o'clock time frame allows them to do that. Yes, I understand that the feeling is if it's a hot issue, they're going to come anyway. That's not true, because some of them can't. And so that's the purpose of the 5 o'clock. And I just wanted to express that. And again, I wasn't going to come up being that it was withdrawn, but being that it's still discussed, I want to let you know that I think it should remain at 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Turner. Are there? All right. Vic?
Dick Scarsoni, 125 Wood Chase. Have y'all thought about maybe having the port meeting begin at 3 and maybe the council meeting begin at 5? That's all my comment.
That's a good point. Dr. Gui?
I don't care what time we meet. I really don't. But what bothers me the most is when we're in Point LaHash at 5 o'clock, the only thing on people's minds is we got to catch that 7:30 ferry because I live in Buras, or I live in Empire, or I live in Port Sulphur. And believe me, I understand that. So what we end up doing, and those of you who have been there, we rush through the agenda, we defer items, we put things off to hurry up and catch the ferry so we can get out there. I really don't care, but I think that's a point that we need to realize. And if we're okay with that, then we're okay with that. So whatever you decide to do, Mr. LaFrance, that's up to you. And if you're going to put it back on, we'll vote on it. If not, we'll let it go. But I want people to understand that that's how I feel about it. We need to meet. We need to meet. And what's the best time? We have to decide what's the best time. But there is a negative when we meet in Point LaHash. And we have to do something if we're going to do a 2.5-hour meeting. We need to maybe modify those meetings to identify what is the most important issue and move that up on the agenda so that we don't leave something hanging where people are having to wait 2 weeks to address something that could be addressed that night. Thank you.
Please.
You can't come back.
Oh, have you already spoken on this agenda item?
Yes.
Okay. Please come up, but please do make it brief, and we're going to go ahead and move on it after
Yes,
this one.
Wyona Kirk and 104 Sarah. Now, what he said about the ferry, you guys controlling everything that you want to control on the days that you do meet in Puntlahash, you modify the ferry time. Let them extend the time on the ferry till 10 o'clock. Do something like that. Fair is fair, right is right. 5 o'clock is the time that people can make it here, regardless. And like he said, we're going to do what we want to do. You shouldn't, that's why so much stuff has been getting away. And like you said, people are here for a hot topic. I'm getting involved. I'm starting to get involved with this. You're going to see my face more often. Yeah, they're here for a hot topic, and they may disappear, but I'm going to try to be here for every meeting because too much stuff has been going. Too much of our tax-paying money has been spent on unnecessary stuff because we haven't been involved. So y'all modify the ferry time in Puntlahash. Y'all got the power to do whatever you want. That's basically what Mr. Gouy said.
Thank you very much. That's a good point. Commissioner Bartholomew.
Saying it's a bad situation in Puntlahash. I know I must be speaking for certain people, but it's a bad situation for me up here. I don't know, complain about it. One night I drove all the way around New Orleans, all the way around, because of the meeting. Didn't want to leave because of issues that was being confronted on this council. That I think that was very important to me, to the parish, and the constituency. So that doesn't bother me. I don't like going around, but that's my job. So that's all I'm saying. So when we talk about negative stuff, negativity, we got to look at the total picture. It's negative any kind of way we go, we're going to have an impact that we don't like to do. And I don't just like the comparison. You know what I'm saying? So.
All right, are there any other questions from the board, or we'll go ahead and move on this? All right, I'd like to call a question. If this is in play or not, I don't know if this has been
What I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, instead of withdraw it, I'll defer it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. LaFrance.
And and then if the time run out, I'll just reintroduce it. And at the same time, we'll monitor what type of participation that we have from the public.
All right, so for now, it's headlights and coffee. All right, moving along.
Headlights and coffee. Where's the coffee?
Item 6E. 6D was withdrawn at the request of Commissioner Newberry. 6E, an ordinance to amend the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District manpower structure to remove the unclassified position of diesel mechanic and add the unclassified position of marine diesel mechanic and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Mr. Durr, could you give us a 1 or 2 minute, basic description why this is important to keep the fleet going? Thank you. Oh, I'd like to offer, seconded by Commissioner Arborough. All right. Mr. Durr, please.
Good afternoon. We're filling this position. We've actually creating another dock that's going to be down lower south. It's been vacant for a few years. We have no extra personnel in the port, and only have one person in the diesel mechanic area. It's been unfair to him. He takes vacation. He still gets called out. Unless he's out of town, he still comes out. Middle of the night, Saturdays, Sundays. So this position has always been a position in the port, as long as my 24 years I've been there, and we had filled it. So we decided to go ahead and fill it with the upcoming things we have going on. It's fully funded. It's always been in the books. We've advertised, and we've realized when we went to go advertise that it was an ordinance that was passed here that the diesel, it's basically housekeeping. On our manpower sheet, it said diesel mechanic. The proper term is marine diesel mechanic. Now the difference is grade 16 on civil services book, marine diesel mechanic is grade 17. It's one step difference. It's $1,425 difference.
I get that when I go to the hardware store too with marine in front of it.
Right, per year. Of course, this council body, this body has changed that due to tier 3, tier 4 engines, that kind of stuff, to try to give a little more incentive to hire somebody. So I'm asking for your vote today to move forward with hiring this position. In addition to that, this person not only is a diesel mechanic, just like the other diesel mechanic we have, he fills in as a rescue engineer. He's always on the boats anyway working. So if we have somebody fall out sick or need to go out, leave, and also stay during storms. So we always have a maintenance guy stay for the storms as well. We currently have been struggling to get rescue engineers, and we really need to look at that. I've been working with civil service. We've got 2 vacancies and 2 people in LTD. So I'm 4 people short, actually 3 on LTD. This has nothing to do with this job, so to speak, but will help as well because that person can also fill in as an engineer when need be.
Help with overtime, right?
Yes, sir.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for?
Yeah, I do.
Sure, go
Good
ahead,
question.
Commissioner Bartholomew.
What is the difference between a diesel mechanic and a marine diesel mechanic? The reason why I'm asking that question, anytime you tag the word marine to it, it automatically goes up. The cost and everything goes up on it.
Right. In this,
But for I'm understanding, those engines are basically the same. They operate the same, with the exception of certain modification, like
Cooler.
for lack of time, I'll explain the best I can. What civil service tried to do a few years back, not blaming anybody, was to break up and have these positions where they had diesel mechanic, hydraulic guy, and so on and so forth, and categorize it. For lack of a second and whatnot, it fell off on this body here and never got resolved. But one thing that the main difference is when you say marine or diesel is the tiers. An old engine in our old boats was a tier 2. Engines we have in our boats today, electronically, technology, is tier 4 engines. You actually need a technician, not a mechanic. You plug it into a computer like you do your modern day cars, and you diagnose it. So that's the difference. Again, this is only one grade difference. It's $1,425 a year.
But that's the training down. You have to have these trainings so that everything we go to technology.
Correct.
Basically, when you go in the car, the dealership, you got to know technology.
That's correct.
So,
So we have the programs for our engines.
Yeah,
we
all
have
I'm
the
just
computers.
saying is that
Yes, sir.
with the word marine mean more charges. But if there's not any dealing with that, then that's fine by me.
Right.
That's the only thing I'm concerned about, the sound that's involved in something that anybody that's going to school now going to be certified with that aspect of it, that encompass all of it.
Yep.
Not just the mechanical, but the technology as well.
Correct. You have to have computer. This job actually has computer skills on the job description.
Yeah.
You have computer skills. Yep.
I'm just trying to save you a few dollars.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Kognievich.
A mechanic and a marine is the coolant. Truck drives down the road, air cools everything. In a marine vessel, water cools it. So that's the only difference.
Manifolds.
You still got to have a computer guy to come check on the engines now.
Are there any other questions from the board or from folks in the audience? All right. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All right, let the record reflect the vote passed 9-0. Moving along.
New business, there are no introduction of resolutions wherein a suspension is being sought. Number 7B, review of external audit findings, Commissioner Blank.
We handled this morning. I'm going to go ahead and defer it, or withdraw it.
C, discussion and status of progress by the No Tolls Group, Commissioner Roussel.
Yes. At this time, I'd like to invite anybody from the No Tolls Group to come forward and make some comments. We had a meeting yesterday with the governor after the port met with them, and we had a discussion on the toll bridge and the disappointment that we had concerning the deal that we've got. To make a long story short, we really didn't get any progress as far as changing the contract because the contract is already signed. They believe that it's a good deal. We expressed our concerns about how bad of a deal it was, and I'll yield to anybody from the No Tolls Group to come forward and make the comment.
Once again, Vic Scarsoni, 125 Wood Chase and Bell Chase. Yesterday, I was privileged to go and see the governor with Benny and also the lawyer, and we had Matt Comier with us, and we spoke with Governor Edwards and also Sean Wilson, the Secretary of State, Treasurer, for the Department of Transportation. During the meeting, we expressed our issues with the cost. One of our big issues was a early payout. And there is an early payout. We could get out of this thing early if we pay plenary $700 million to get out of it. No difference. So since the contract has been signed, in order for state to get out of it, they have to pay plenary the full amount. That's the deal. That's what we left with. I showed him a bridge. There's a bridge in Colorado. It's called it's a bypass bridge for the Hoover Dam. It was built in 2010. It's 900 foot above the water line. It's the highest concrete arch structure in the Western Hemisphere. It cost $114 million to build. Ours cost $158, $160, and then we have to tear down the other two structures, so it comes up about $170. Of course, you know the numbers. $95 million comes off the top because the state and federal government pays for that. So we're on the hook for $70 million. At the end of the day, that's what we owe them. The bureaucracy they built on the whole thing will cause us to stay into this term for 30 full years. It's going to cost us $5 million of maintenance and O&M per year. It's going to cost us the first year they do it and put it in service. It's going to cost us over $1 million per month to have that bridge there. And that goes on for 30 years. At the end of it, it's almost $3 million per month. It's going to cost the residents to cross that bridge every month. So we didn't get anywhere. And I was very disappointed. The governor did have our ear. I think I made some good points. Sean Wilson was steadfast, and it's still a good deal. And I told him to simply take the 3 last zeros off the figure and do it as a house payment. He did mention that we knew there was a toll attached. And I explained to him that when you take a house mortgage or buy a house, there's a mortgage attached. What you don't do is you don't have a bank and a builder build a house and you don't know the price. You find out the price after the contract is signed. And that's what we got here, guys. The contract was signed and we didn't even know the comprehensive agreement. We didn't know that the windfall was going to go to the state. Now, the state said yesterday they guarantee that every penny from the windfall will come back to us. They could either pay down the toll rate, they could either put it toward the end result of the total payment, which we still don't know what that payment is, or they could pay the CPI rate. We don't know. It's up to the state. So if the CPI rate is being paid down, it doesn't benefit the citizens. It only benefits the businesses because we don't pay a CPI. The 20 cents that the state, that plenary gave us off, or the state gave us off, is being absorbed by the state. They took that. So when you look at it, the plenary still gets their $700 million no matter what. Plenary has not taken a hit on this whole deal. You know why? Because they signed a contract. So if I sign a contract with Mr. Benny or anybody, it's binding. For me to get out of it, or for me to get out the contract, it's going to cost. And that's where we're at. So, that being said, we will get a beautiful bridge. Sean Wilson also stated that in about 20 years, we might have to replace the expansion joints on the bridge. Remember, this is a brand new bridge. So I politely asked him, I said, when's the last time you replaced the expansion joints on our Bell Chase Bridge? And he couldn't answer. So I said, well, how much is the maintenance cost for this bridge going to be? He said, you really don't know. I said, well, how much the maintenance did you pay on the Woodland Bridge in the last 10 years per year? Again, he didn't know. So he's dealing with stuff he don't even know the numbers to, but he's giving us a deal. I don't think he dealt in our best interest. I don't think the council beat the desk hard enough when we finally found out what the deal was. My biggest fear in this whole thing was I had a spreadsheet. My biggest fear was my spreadsheet was going to be wrong. And for a long time, I sat up at night going, my God, what did I miss? I'm going to look like a fool in front of all my friends. Well, when the comprehensive agreement came out, they had this thing called a tier. And the tier tells the state how much windfall they're going to get if they exceed a certain amount of income that year. Well, when it came out, the minimal at 30 years, they're going to receive just in tolls, not the $95 million up front, in tolls is $632 million. That's minimal. They could receive from what 50% windfall or above that is $785 million, $800 million plus $95 million. So it could be up to $900 million after it's all said and done. I don't know how much the bridge is going to cost to do Peters Road. It's going to be a 4-lane bridge. We got private people going to pay for that. But the state wants us to pay $750 million for this bridge in Belchase. $750 million. We could build a Superdome for $750 million. We're going to get a 73-foot bridge for $750 million. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much, Vic. Mrs. Landry, please state your name and address.
Heidi Nungesser Landry, 166 Colony Road, Belchase. I guess I've been here so many times talking to y'all individually. When he talks about the state, the windfall, they're going to give back to Plaquemines. If anybody here believes that, if we're going to trust the state now, I don't know what people are thinking, because I'm not putting my money in thinking they're going to really help us. They haven't helped us yet. So I'm asking this board and council to do whatever they can. We have a avenue through the courts to try to stop this. And I think as leaders of this parish, y'all should do this for the people, because this is a horrible deal. I'm not going to go through the numbers. Vic loves doing that. Everybody knows it's a terrible deal. It's on paper. This isn't a personal thing, whether I'm for a toll or not a toll. This is a bad deal. And we really need to do everything we can, and I hope y'all will do everything you can to stop it. And I appreciate Benny Roussel's help in all this, because he has been a real advocate for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Landry.
Hello, I'm Mike Scorsoni, 150 Adam Drive. I just want to reiterate, I have a letter that was written by Sean Wilson on September 3rd, 2019, sent to, at the time, Chris Leopold, Kirk Lapine, Troy Carter, and Bo Black. I just want to point out, speaking to Sean Wilson, he when you ask him a point-blank question, he answers it in riddles. He sidesteps the question. In Chris Leopold's office back last year, I asked him straight up, how did you grade this proposal? What was the litmus test? What was the criteria? And he couldn't answer that. There's a lot of things he can't answer. But getting back to this letter, if you read some of the things he writes in this that y'all should have picked up on, when the full-term CPI amount is accounted for with contingencies met, the fund could also be used toward purposes of reducing tolls. Not shall, not will, but could. Guess what? They're not going to use that. They're going to use that money for other things. Another instance in here, the escrow amount can be used to reduce toll rates. Doesn't say will, doesn't say shall. And if you read the comprehensive agreement, which I have, and I think I've explained that to you last time I was here in January, I read that comprehensive agreement. I saw what such a bad deal. That was actually the draft comprehensive agreement that the council received. A lot of that information was in there. At that time, bells and whistles should have been going off. They weren't. But when we got the finalized comprehensive agreement, mind you, that was after the Joint Transportation Committee voted for this thing, when the facts and figures were in there, when Plenary is getting paid $104 million at month 28, $104 million Plenary is going to have in their pocket at month 28, and we're still on the hook for $700 million in tolls. That just puts things in perspective of how bad of a deal it is and how open-ended the Department of Transportation kept the comprehensive agreement to benefit them and not Plaquemines Parish, when in 2018 they said all tolls, all money, anything over will benefit Plaquemines Parish on one of their slides. We have it. That doesn't seem to be the case, so that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Please, Donald Valley, go ahead.
Donald Valley, 109 Nancy Court. I think all of you all have already agreed with pretty much what you heard today and in the past, is that this is not a good deal for us in any form or fashion. And we got backed in the corner. We had commitments from the governor, from the president of the Transportation Committee, that if you don't want it, we're not going to make you take it. Well, that was a lie. And if you think we're going to get the money back, again, that's going to be misrepresented to us. I think you appealed to the state attorney general. I think he responded to you and told you could do three things, alternatives with that. You've already exhausted the first two, and the only one left for you right now is to file for declaratory judgment. I think all of y'all have been fighting this thing from the beginning, recognize the fight of the people, and I don't think there's any alternative at this point in time except to file for the declaratory judgment and basically go to war with the state over this issue and try to bring it to a head. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Donald. I appreciate that. Mr. Forshey.
I think that, this is a port meeting, and we've been talking about how we're going to develop this port, and we're going to make this parish lots and lots of money. And I'm not sure, but I believe that there is only one person in this whole room. Well, let me back up. And the Port Administration wants to tell us, the people of this parish and this commission, how good they're going to do for this parish, and yet there is one person in this room that went before this transportation committee and said, we are in support of this project. And if you ask me, he ought to be looking for a job. But y'all gave him his job for another year. And he ought to be run out of town, folks. How in the world can we take this? That now we're going to have to go through a lawsuit against this state in order to try to help the people of this parish. And yet, I hope we're successful. But I think that if everyone in this room, and I mean everyone, would have spoken against this project being a toll bridge, that we would not be sitting here at this point in time. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you very much, Rob. When we walked into that auditorium through that side door, that's what set things off for me. And I realized that the meeting I was about to walk into was a very well laid out, facilitated meeting. Nobody had a microphone. You walked through there like a snake. You couldn't hear what your neighbors had to say. The same people that put that meeting on, it's an outfit that, they're ramrodding that interstate right through the middle of downtown Shreveport, and, they did the PR work for the Road Home program. It's what they do. It's their specialty. I kind of knew from that moment that it was a lost cause, like it was just the state's will. It was a unbeatable bureaucracy. It's hard operating down here with not a lot of representation, small numbers. We really are painted into a corner many times, and things are, no matter how much we want them, sometimes out of our control. We weren't exactly speaking as a cohesive body up here. If some of you remember, it was hard to come up with a consensus. Sometimes we would, sometimes we wouldn't. It was strange. I wish I could have done more. I wish that I was 5 years ahead on it, because when we walked in January of last year, you know how it was. The deal was done. The concrete was set. Party politics are a really weird thing. I'm an independent, and I didn't rush to take sides or anything like that. And some folks are really involved in that kind of thing. And in public infrastructure with private organizations managing it is a tenet of, sometimes people have those views. And I think people can speak up within their party to try and change those types of things if they are involved, to where it's a line in the sand that we don't want to cross, where we don't want a Canadian company to manage our bridge and it bleed almost $1 billion out of the community, I'm sorry, that's all I have to say. Mr. Henry, please go ahead.
Yeah, man. Over several years ago, I stood right here and said that P3 deal never was good for the people, man. Always was a bad deal. The public-private partnership deal never was a good deal. Not for the people. Now, Mr. Valley had a real good point. I mean, all we got left is a declaratory judgment. Are we going to hire outside attorneys, or are we going to use in-house attorneys? Because we got to do something. We just can't sit here and talk about it all day. But I can tell you something, Richie. They had 3 meetings in Belchase, man. Most of these guys who was already council people, they didn't get up there and say a word about none of this, man. When the deal was going down, nobody wanted to say nothing. Nothing. We got to stop this, man. We got to stop this. This was a bad deal from the beginning, and I really hope they could do something for the people this time. But I agree with Mr. Valet. You got to file a lawsuit. I mean, what else could we do?
Well, apparently, according to the legislation Mr. Roussel just introduced, I'm about to sue the governor. So,
hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Please, by all means.
I'll be real quick. Burgard Turner, 161 East Bellevue. Mr. Robb asked about, he was pointing out someone being in favor of this, but where was PABI? Blackman's Business and Industry Association, because my understanding is they were in favor of it. And so if we want to run anybody out of town, you know what I find funny is that we're willing to touch certain individuals, but then there are other people, we let them take advantage of us. And if they were in Baton Rouge speaking on behalf of the toll bridge, which is my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm right, I'd like for you to say so that the public would know. If PABI was on the side of this toll, say so. Let everybody know.
Thank you. I forgot about them. You are right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Turner. Are there anybody would like to add any comments from the panel?
I could say they was up there speaking for it.
We have one more.
Our state representative.
Representative Cormier, please state your name and address. Thank you for joining us today.
Matt Cormier, 106 Highland. We were able to have a meeting yesterday with the governor. Councilman Roussel did a great job. Also, Big Scarsoni. And the situation is we are where we are right now. I believe from day one, when I was not a state representative, that a bridge toll was ridiculous. I take that from a conversation I had with a gentleman who, that was his job. They were constructing one of the biggest railroad projects in the world, actually in Africa at the time. And I asked him, do I need a toll on a bridge? We were talking about a bridge across the Mississippi River. And he laughed. And I said this at the Joint Transportation Committee meeting. He laughed and said, no, that's greedy politicians. So from the get-go, this was a bad idea, a bad deal. You know, I think those searching for PPPs could have looked harder for a better situation, but we are where we are now. We have that option of filing lawsuit. I did speak with Secretary about the possibility of retroactive usage fees, because the state didn't help us on the bridge or the tunnel in some PP's setups. Because there is no toll, they'll just charge a usage fee to the state for 40, 30 years. And even if we get a percentage of that, even if they knock it down to 10%, anything we can use to apply to the bad situation we have at hand will improve our situation, barring a better negotiated deal if we do sue. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Representative Cormier. I think everything needs to be on the table, including that bridge, which is going to be a $160 million asset, being a taxable piece of property. If it wants to be, you know, if they want to make it a privately owned asset, then they need to pay for that privilege. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right. Oh.
I'd like to respond.
Dan.
I'd like to respond.
I think y'all have already come up once before, but
I'd like to respond to Turner's.
Okay, Rob, can you please make it quick? We're going on 2 hours.
I'll make it pretty quick. Okay, so you're right. I did forget about Pa B. And I am one who said, and have told as many people as I could say this too, is that if you know somebody with Pa B that has supported this thing, don't buy anything from them. So, just for the record, that is exactly my statement now and has been since. But in the parish government bodies, being the port and the government, there's only one person. And that is the reason that I said only one person. So, to clarify that.
Thank you, Rob. Mr. Valley?
I think you all are past the point of negotiating. You've been beating this dead horse for a long time. Until you got the lawsuit filed and you're in the midst of a litigation, you're not going to bring anybody to the table to have any clear discussions. And you're wasting your time. Keep talking to them.
Thank you very much, Donald. All right, moving on.
Number 8, approval of the July 23rd, 2020 meeting minutes.
Offer.
I'll second. Offered by Commissioner Bartholomew, seconded by Commissioner Arborough.
In a queue,
My apologies, I didn't see.
The meeting minutes.
Go ahead, Benny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to close on this issue. Plenary has taken over control of the tunnel and the bridge since April the 15th. They're responsible for maintenance. And if you've seen any improvement, let me know. I haven't seen any. And, in discussions, we've already got issues with their design as far as their drainage design. They're overlaying a 10-year drainage project. I've already submitted to DOTD as complete for the north side of the tunnel, tying into a 25-year drainage project that we've been working on in this government for over 10 years. And they didn't communicate between DOTD in Bridge City and DOTD in Baton Rouge. I could not believe the conference call I was on when I was listening to them say that we might have to pay plenary an extra fee to redesign the engineering for the drainage, that we have already paid the local engineering firm here to design for a FEMA project. So, I can see that this is going to be gobbling up funds that we are going to be paying for 30 years if we don't take action. To answer your question, Mr. Henry, I introduced legislation earlier today that if my colleagues support, we will file a declaratory judgment on the issue that we believe is valid. We will use our council attorney as our lead attorney on this, make it as efficient as possible, and go to the table. We either win or we lose, And if we get some negotiations in the middle of it, that would be great. But as you heard today, that it makes no sense to take a bridge, a $150 million bridge, and then take another $150 million for maintenance if you add $5 million times 30 years to that number, and then give the company $150 million worth of profit and interest. You still only come up to $450 million. And I'm just making these numbers up. And I try to use them to tell you how ridiculous I see this project and the cost it will cause the people of Plaquemines and the businesses of Plaquemines to bear. So if I get the support next meeting rather, if you want to come back, it's at 5 o'clock. You can put it on your calendar. Convenience, remember, convenience, 5 o'clock. Come back. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Commissioner Rousseau. Are there any other comments from the board or from the folks in the audience? Okay. All right, moving on to the minutes. Approval of the minutes, I'm sorry.
So often.
Offered by Rousseau, seconded by Blink. All right, approved 9-0 on the minutes.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Motion by Kognovich, seconded by Rousseau.
Got beat.
All right, 9-0 on the closing the meeting. And I'd like to call this meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Plaquemines Parish Council, serving as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to a close at 7:06 p.m. Thank you all very much for adhering to the social distancing. We